The auroras are out, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of Aurora Airwaves. Hi everyone, Jordan Bianchi here. Thanks again for joining me. For those who are new, Aurora Airwaves is a podcast where my guests and I share our perspectives on healing, artistic discovery and recovery, creative well-being, and spirituality. My quest is to discover how to live a balanced, prosperous life while creating the art that I love. As I step out of a dark period in my own life, I'm seeing all of the light that is and always was all around me. I welcome you in each episode to see this light and the light that I will discover as my journey unfolds. In these airwaves, I'm happy to share the auroras of my friend and collaborator, Keith Gallucci. In any artistic journey, it is imperative to have collaborators with whom you can grow as you develop your own artistic style, your vocabulary, your passions, your auroras, your light. Los Angeles-based actor and voice actor Keith Gallucci and I first collaborated on our film As Ever, which we shot in South Carolina and Oswego, New York during our junior year of college. Here's a moment from the film.
Tough test.
This is ridiculous. There is no way anyone is going to pass this thing. It's not like it matters anyway. We're just going to get drafted.
Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear.
That's what happens in wartime, James. Drafts happen. I tell you, though, I'd love to be on the front lines.
You don't mean that.
I don't. I can't stand this schoolwork. I mean, do I look like a lawyer? No. But do what the old man wants, right?
In a later episode, we'll do more of a deep dive into the making of the film and why it was so life-changing. What we found was we were beginning to understand each other's artistic tendencies and develop a shorthand. Keith has always been an artist's artist, as Sarah Burgess puts it in episode 3, and I wholeheartedly agree. Over the years, we have developed a system of creating audio dramas and working bi-coastally. Keith has always known that being an actor is what he was brought here to do. He has always been clear about that fact and has been unwavering about it. And yet, his goal has always been, first and foremost, to become a better person. Because by being a better person, we can become better at creating art that can enhance the lives of everyone it touches, including ourselves. So often we get lost in the noise of life, the hustle, the schedules, and the projects we love can unintentionally become tainted by the chaos of the day. While everyone's goals differ, balance craves an open heart, an open, calm life. The meaning of an open heart is to embody the energy of acceptance, that there are many truths, not just one, that there are many voices that need to experience different things. As long as I have known Keith, he has always embodied acceptance and the responsibilities that come with acceptance. In this episode, we will talk about how Keith survived moving to Los Angeles from northern New York and kept his auroras alive and well in the face of professional hardship, artistic discovery, and staying afloat. We will discuss life from the perspective of an actor, a life of growth, change, artistry, patience, and the difficult task of staying on his path. Keith has always supported me, not by saying, "You're great," but by noting when I'm hitting my groove that he sees and knows as Jordan energy. It's a gift to have collaborators who know your tendencies, and when you're on the right path, even before you do. In this episode, we reference Flightless on the Way to the North, our latest audio drama, which is available in the first episode of the podcast, as well as the Aurora Airwaves YouTube channel. If you haven't already, check out our YouTube channel, where you can watch an animated adaptation of the audio drama. And, as I promised, stick around until the end of the episode for a meditation. Our meditations are back, and I'm happy to say they're here to stay. Thank you for your patience while I develop systems in creating this podcast. For now, let's meet Keith. I'm here with one of my dear friends, Keith Gallucci. Keith is in Los Angeles right now, and I feel like this is an excellent representation of how our work relationship has been for the past couple years. We figured out, I think back in 2018, that we needed to continue to collaborate. We had been doing a lot of work together in college, and we were both figuring things out. But this system of working with like a bi-coastal work schedule and workflow really does work. So this is incredible for me, obviously. I've been wanting to have this interview for a very long time. We've actually already had an interview or two in the past when I was learning how to do all these, run an interview and whatnot. But I'm so happy to have Keith here, and let's see how he's doing. How are you, Keith?
Fantastic. And I'm glad that we're doing this. Finally, after all, with most of the stuff that we do, it's like all trial and error, and we've tried a bunch of stuff, and I'm just glad that we're here. And I'm so excited for this new project that you're embarking on and all the facets of it. It's all encompassing of Jordan. It's like everything that you do put into one thing, which I think is just like, you had to go through all that stuff to get to here, and now you're here, and it's so exciting to like finally see this culmination, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
I think it's interesting how long something like this takes. And like if I were to go back in time, I'd be like, just keep trying things out. Because I remember when we made our first audio drama, which we'll share in a future episode. It was really like a process of invention.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for everyone who doesn't know, like Keith and I, we studied film together, and we came from this very visual background. And so when you have to take out the ability to show things visually all the time, it really makes you think, okay, storytelling is dependent on just the story, and everything around that is a wonderful addition that can move the soul and the spirit in so many beautiful ways. But at the end of the day, you need to find ways to create stories. And we were both at a place where we were breaking into the industries and breaking into doing what we love to do as adults. But it was definitely tricky, especially before everybody started to figure everything out during COVID with Zoom and working remotely and stuff. So it's so cool that we were kind of ahead of the curve with this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited to just share a lot of our process, and how did we go about figuring out what we liked doing and what worked and what didn't work, and how that's led to this whole, like you're saying, this culmination of really like a myriad of projects and ideas and insights and stuff. How does that become where we are now that we're in our 30s?
Yeah, and like even before COVID, one of the biggest things that like industry professionals and artists would always say is like, make your own content, make your own stuff. With the advance of technology and all of these capabilities that we have now, there's no excuse to not be making your own stuff if you want to make your own stuff. And I feel like you and I have gotten into a sort of rhythm with doing that. And I think I think that I've made more creative projects with you than I have with people who are actually like around me, like physically here in Los Angeles. And so I just think that's cool that we figured out how to do that. And if I think about it, I don't think there's really that many limitations, really. I mean, it doesn't seem like a path of total resistance of making a project like this. I mean, maybe it did at the beginning, but now it just seems like, oh yeah, we're going to work on this thing and we know how to do it, which is really cool that we can just put something out like that.
Well, that's a big part of it, though, right? Like giving yourself the freedom to experiment and grow and foster a creative relationship.
Hmm.
Because at the beginning, we had, for everyone who doesn't know, we Keith and I had made a pretty successful short film in college, and it really opened us up to what the possibilities of storytelling can be and what a team working relationship can be. And we've been striving to get to that point for a very long time. And I think that like when we reconnected in 2018, it was finding out what our priorities were and where we wanted to go and what were the sort of projects we wanted to do. And a lot of that, I'm finding that like the workflow that we have now is seamless. Like we get how we speak, we know what our needs are, we know kind of what expectations are in terms of like turnarounds and delivery and that sort of thing. And
Hmm.
then where like what's the bigger picture of where it's going to fit in. But at the beginning, we didn't know that. In 2018, with our starting off with just an audio drama, there was a lot of time that just went into talking and hanging out and vibing and learning what we wanted to try to do.
Yeah, it's interesting that we we got to know each other more after college than we
Yeah.
did in college. I mean, what I think it was probably like our um, junior and senior years we started to really um, pick up the pace with like learning about one another, especially working creatively. But the amount that I mean, well, to be fair, you're only in college for 4 years, and I've been out here in LA for 8.5, and we've had a lot of time to, you know, catch up, and now I feel like we have, like you said, we have a shorthand, and
Mm-hmm.
I know your sensibilities, you know my sensibilities, and though we might have differences in certain perspectives, we are quite similar in terms of, uh, I guess, creative. A lot of our creative visions kind of align, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the clearer we get with the stories that we want to tell and the way that they get told, I feel like it's just expediting our process for the short stories, but also for seeing where the bigger projects can go that are right around the corner.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just it goes to show you that like something you said a couple minutes ago was like the whole thing of every one of our mentors saying that like or people online is like make your content, make your stories, keep doing what you can in that way. And I think that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like in the way we were trained in school, we learned a lot about a particular version of the craft or a particular way to go about it, which was making the big short film that could be entered in film festivals and that could exist on its own in that format. But I think that in terms of supporting oneself in a career and seeing longevity to it and building systems that support constant storytelling and constant collaboration that was not really that was not really addressed. There weren't necessarily ideas on how to do that at the time. So I know for myself it was always the goal after college was keep finding ways to make powerful short films to wow the world and to wow the industry. And while that's still like a goal, with bigger projects, what do we do in the day to day? How do we keep telling stories when we're going around pitching other stories? Because there were years where it was like pitching big projects and they were going nowhere. Why were they going nowhere? Because I didn't have a body of work or, years of experience of making small projects that led to bigger projects.
Hmm.
So I feel like I felt like we were kind of left in the dark in some ways of knowing how to be putting out content, putting out stories here and there. And so it's cool that we've developed these systems of making short pieces, connecting, creating, whatever it is that needs to be created, and doing that while we're pursuing big projects.
And also realizing that we're we're doing it for us. Like, yes, at the end of the day, we want people to hear a story that we created, and we want people to hear and experience the stuff that we work on. But at the end of the day, you have to enjoy it first. And I think, like you're saying how we were taught, it's like, how do you please other people with the work or the industry and whatever? Whereas like, it's like, you gotta enjoy your thing first before you can share it with others. Because if you don't enjoy it, then nobody else is going to enjoy it. And so I think that's something also that we've grasped onto, which is, oh, we think this is cool, so let's keep going in that direction. And hopefully somebody else thinks it's cool. But there's enough people out there generally. If you think something's cool, somebody else might.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? So it's like understanding what's cool all over again. Like, I feel like I had to do that of like, for years of going down the path of like always loving what I did, and then all of a sudden catching myself mid-20s of like, oh my gosh, I'm not actually creating for myself anymore. Like, this energy of like trying to impress the industries, trying to impress the people with the money that are gatekeeping, air quotes. And it's like, the only person that's gatekeeping is us, because there's nothing that can stop us from making really cool art at any point of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like that energy was present at times, but you can get lost in the shuffle of trying to put yourself out there. I mean, I would love to hear your perspectives of like your, like, what you kind of have to balance, because you're doing you're not just interviewing for jobs, you're doing consistent auditions for all different types of projects, and you're meeting all sorts of people, and you're balancing, like, of course, our creative projects, but you have your own creative projects. So it's, to me, it's so fascinating, like, what you are able to accomplish in terms of just showing up for yourself, because you have so many different things happening at the same time.
It's definitely like it's a balance that I'm still trying to find. And I've been out here, like I said, for 8.5 years, and I have not mastered the craft of a balanced lifestyle yet. But like, cause I've gone from like survival job to survival job to survival job, which is just kind of like, that's how it is. If you move to a big city to try to break into the acting business, you have to support yourself. And when I first moved out here, I made the mistake of not getting a job for the first like 3 months, because I felt like I had it. I was like, I got my resume, I got my headshot, I studied in Russia. Like, I got my demo reel. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm gonna get an agent right out the gate, and everything's gonna be fine. So I went just full bore into the acting stuff for the first 3 months, and then realized that, oh, I'm running out of money fairly quickly here. So I got a
Did you
job at a
have some
movie
money saved
theater.
at that time that
Yeah,
you
I
thought was
saved
comfortable
before.
enough?
Yeah, I saved before I got here, and I still think it was a good amount to move here with. I've never had like I don't know what people might call a comfortable amount of money, but I moved out here with enough to sustain myself for a little bit. But then it was like, okay, it's time to get a job. So I got a job at a movie theater. Later on, got a job at an escape room, and then I got a job at a really high end shopping center, which I was at for a couple of years, and actually ended up becoming an assistant manager, and realized that that's too much of myself to give if I want to keep creating and give as much of myself as is needed to actually pursue this career. So I had to leave that job. I was delivering groceries. I went and did Uber Eats and DoorDash. And now I'm doing, I work a lot from home, which is much more helpful for the schedule of this stuff. And a lot of the auditions are done from home now. So you just set up your camera and your ring light, and it's good and bad. It's good because you get to do it as many times as you want until you get it just the way you want it. But it's bad because you can do it as many times as you want and get it just the way you want it. You know,
So
you
how long
go
do you
into,
average per audition between
oh,
like
yeah.
reading and then rehearsing?
Yeah, it depends. It depends. Like if it's I'll look at the script and usually, I mean, lately it's been stuff that's like, 5 lines or something like that, like a small co-star role in a TV show,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't take me long to memorize. I know I have 5 lines. I know what each of them are trying to say, so I memorize them fairly quickly. And then I have to kind of realize what the show is, so the tone and what function am I carrying in the show. So it's like if it's a co-star role, you're not carrying much of a function. You're carrying more of a function than you are a purpose. You're literally there to give a piece of information. You're kind of like a piece of talking furniture in a way, and so so you're just kind of there to serve that function. And so you find a way to not. You don't need a backstory. You don't need to go full into the character and like, who is this guy? It's like, no, you just need to say the lines sometimes. Sometimes you just need to convey what the lines are saying. And
When it's such a limited focus in that way. Oh, I still have a lot of light.
it's less fulfilling, that kind of work, but there is a sort of pride that you can take in knowing that you can be, for lack of a better word, some people like to use the word like natural. You're a natural actor. I don't like using that word because I don't know why. I have an aversion to certain buzzwords that I keep hearing all the time. It's more about just living. You're just living this person's life for a few minutes, and they're not going to. You're not gonna. They're not gonna overdo. If it's let's say it's a lawyer, right? If it's a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
they don't need to put a whole lot on it. They're doing this every single day. This is routine. So you have to say the lines like you've been doing it for 20 years or whatever. And so those are a lot of the different kinds of roles that I've been reading for, because that's where I'm at in my career. They're not really they have to see me do some things first before they're going to trust me with the big roles. However, I have gotten to audition for a couple of really big things, because sometimes the directors are open to seeing people they've never seen before, which is, really cool when they do that. And so when they give me something like that where I can really branch out and really stretch, I'll take a lot more time working on it and doing that work that is really fun and fulfilling, like really diving in and carving out moments and getting my hands dirty. But yeah, the balance of doing auditions, working on our projects. I have some of my own projects that sometimes I let go by the wayside, and I need to jump back into those. I have some friends out here that I'm working on some stuff with as well. And
Yeah, you
I
had a
think,
short film or something you're working on, right? I saw something on
yeah,
Instagram. We haven't caught up about
yeah,
that.
that was I shot My Day a while ago. It hasn't come out yet. It was just a 1-day shoot for me, but it was really cool because it was a friend of mine from an acting class that I used to go to
Oh, nice.
reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey man, I got a part for you in this short film we're going to make." And I was like, "Cool, I'm in." Like, so I go to this really cool filming location. It's kind of like empty warehouse, and they set up a really kind of dark and dingy sort of group therapy session, and I'm giving a monologue at this group therapy session.
Oh, great.
And it was fun because I hadn't been on a short film set in a really long time. I hadn't, the previous thing I had done was something for this Hulu docuseries, and I was cut out of the show. So this was like the first thing in like a first intimate, like, give a monologue. There's 14 other people in the scene who are watching you do your thing. It was a little intimidating because I was like, I have an audience. You had at this point, a lot of times you go to short films, it's you and somebody else in the scene, small, intimate crew, big crew for this short film. It was actually really, really professional, which is really cool. You never know what you're getting when you get on a short film set. You're like, am I going to get the student film treatment? Am I going to get the, AFI student film treatment or whatever, or am I going to get like, oh, these people are really making a run for, you know, festivals and stuff. Um, uh, so there's different, obviously, like I said, different levels. Like for us, it's like, you know, you have the SUNY student film treatment. Out here, there's a couple of like, you know, really big, you know, USC, UCLA, AFI, where they're,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's a little different calling theirs a student film because, you know, how many crazy directors have came out of there. But then, you know, there's people who are out of school and it's not a student film, it's a short film, whatever, however you want to distinguish it. But anyway, I get there and it's like, you know, you have an audience. There's 14 other people in the scene, and because they have to move the camera around to get everybody's reactions to what I'm saying. And so I'm like, damn, I actually have to be on here. Not, I mean, I would always do my best and always give everything I have, but there's also this level of, I'm not just performing for the camera. There's these other actors here who are going to judge my work. And I sometimes have trouble with that. It's like, what are people seeing? Those kinds of things. Turned out so good. It turned out so good because I don't know how I did. I don't know if it's any good, but there was a couple of actors afterward who I was actually going to approach and say, thank you so much, because they were giving me a lot as the background actors. They didn't have lines or anything. They were just there to listen. And their active listening was so good.
Did you know them at this point from the acting
I've
class?
not.
Or you've never
No,
seen
no,
them?
no. I only knew the one guy from the acting class. The rest of the people I've never seen before. I never met them before. But they were so, their active listening was so great and giving and generous that as I was looking at I would find myself looking back to them. You know, I was just like, I would always go back to them because they were really hearing it. And I was going to approach them and be like, hey, thanks for giving me so much. That was great. They ended up approaching me before I got to approach them. And,
Oh, really?
and told me that they really liked my performance. And one of them said the thing that it has been keeping me going for a while. He said, I learned a lot from you today.
Wow.
And that, I almost cried in front of the stranger because I was just like, that is like one of my passions is like, I would love to teach through my journey of being an actor, because I had such amazing professors and acting coaches and master teachers and things like that, that I would like to inspire others in that way. And so to hear somebody say they learned something from me about acting was like one of the greatest gifts that I could be given. And that was, I was filled with that Aurora energy, that light. That was when I could see it in myself, you know, that you have to have those moments where you can actually see it. And that was one of them.
Well, it's so cool that you were like, you have so many skills and such like a wide range of abilities, and it's just this practice craft that you've been working on for years. And it's so cool that, you know, in this way you were given this opportunity for not only for others to see your light and your passion, because it sounds like you really showed up in terms of like being on and showcasing what you can do and showing up for that role. But like, so others saw it, but you got to see it. And I feel like that's one of the big frustrating things, or it must be, of like putting yourself out there again and again for auditions, and just in the way that auditions are. I mean, everybody hears these stories of that you just have to audition for tons of things and start to get comfortable with not hearing back or getting noticed but not booking that role. It's an entirely different thing living that life. And over the past couple of years, I've been able to hear about that life, but this is something that you actually have to hold on to and learn about that discomfort. So it's so cool to that on the day that you show up, you're getting that positive feedback and you're seeing that light is still, like, that passion is still within you. I feel like
To know that you
shy away from it. But
and to know that you don't necessarily lose it. Like, yes, you should always be practicing and always be learning, but there's going to be something inside you that stays there. And then, like you said about like auditioning and not hearing back and those kinds of things. So we talk about the time balance of balancing, you know, work and creative pursuits and recreation, and like having that balanced life. There's also having the emotional balance, which is a whole other challenge within itself. trying to be okay with not hearing back, or really, really wanting this one and not hearing back, or knowing that this opportunity could change everything and not hearing back, those kind of, like, you have to really, I've gotten better with it over time. It's like anything else, you practice, but I've gotten more comfortable with putting my best stuff out there and not expecting anything in return. Always hoping, I'm a human. I'm always going to hope for it. But one of my acting coaches was like, you go in there to do the audition and you don't go in there thinking, what do they want? How do I give them what they want? You go in there saying, this is how it goes. This is how I do it. This is the part that you want me to play. This is how I play it. You show them your interpretation of it. And then when you're done, you take the sides, you rip them up, you throw them in the garbage, and then you go do something nice for yourself because you got to work today. And so that's like a practice in self-care for the actor. And like, that is what I try to do, even if it's a little thing. I had a voiceover audition, and it was like this weird part of Hollywood one time. And down the street was this coffee shop that I had never tried before, but I'd heard about it. So when I was done with my voiceover audition, I walked down there and I got a cup of coffee and a donut from this place I'd never tried before. Just did something nice for yourself, which I think is a really cool thing for anybody, not just actors. I mean, I think if you're a creative person and you do the work, you do the courageous act of putting something out there of yourself and your creative pursuits, celebrate that, even if it's in a small way. Celebrate that, because it's not easy. A lot of people make it look easy, but it's not, because you're always thinking, somebody's going to see this. What if they see that? What if they see that? What happens if they see me in a different way than I see me? All that stuff. You gotta let it go and celebrate that you did the thing. And I'm getting a little better at that over time.
Well, I like the doing the thing, showing up, being courageous, all those type of things is the audition. It's not the, like, okay, I booked this thing and it's airing tomorrow and now the world sees it. I feel like a lot of times when we, I know for myself, when I was younger, it was always like, unless the big thing is published or the big film is done or whatever, you haven't earned the right to celebrate, or you haven't earned the ability to pat yourself on the back. But what I really like about that you show up for this, an audition is a big thing, but it's one step in this whole process of booking and putting out art and creating and getting known and whatever. But you're treating yourself well each step of the way. So I'm curious, like, what are other, like, things that you do for yourself to sort of regulate throughout the day? Like, I know one thing that you do that I really admire is that you have a very firm, like, cutoff as to how late you're going to be working. You try to, like, taper things off so that you can enjoy the evening and stuff like that, which is something that I still need to learn a little bit more myself. But it's so interesting that, like, I know I really like that you have that system. So I guess I want to know more about, like, what are things that you do to catch yourself from, going down that slippery slope of, I need to do more, I need to push, I haven't earned this. And I also wonder, like, if you were to speak to yourself, like, 2 years ago to 4 years ago to 8 years ago, how would you change? What would you try to encourage yourself in your inner dialogue? Because you've grown so much in your perspectives.
Yeah, I feel like in some ways yes, and in some ways no. I feel like in some ways I've gotten better, and in other ways I might have even gotten worse. But, like, situationally, it's all case by case. But, like, my self-talk, I can catch myself sometimes being real bad, real horrible to myself. But I feel like it might happen less now than it used to. And I think, but as far as, like, the career and stuff goes, I think I would tell my younger self, like, it's going to take much longer than you're thinking. And you need to, like, take it easy and stop holding on so tightly to it because you have to chill and, yes, work hard. Yes, do everything you can for your career, but there's so much that's out of your control. You have to just understand that it's a I'm trying to come up with different words because I hate this cliche, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The cliche that everybody always says is it's a marathon, not a sprint. I hate that. I agree with it 100% for some reason. I just hate it because certain cliches have been said way too many times. It's like, let's find some different ways to say it. But it's true. It really is. Especially in this career, it's like people talk about the overnight success, and like there's no such thing. People like Brad Pitt was overnight just shooting star. Huge. They don't talk about the 10 years he was dressed as a chicken out in front of some fried chicken place, selling chicken. They don't talk about all the time that he spent doing the side jobs and stuff like that. They talk about that one job that was like, oh, this is crazy. It's Brad Pitt. And so I would probably go back and tell myself, this is going to take a long time, so settle in and stop getting so jittery and stop hanging on so tightly to it. And I've gotten to that point, I think, which is good because I don't put so much pressure on the individual audition or on the individual opportunity or meetings or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do, I feel, and I still got to work on this, but relaxing is probably the most important thing that an artist needs to learn in order to create, I think, because the only way you can freely let the inspiration move through you and you can actually communicate that inspiration is through a relaxed self. And I think part of what you're talking about with like how I try to balance is part of that, because I feel sometimes the most relaxed at night when it's quiet and it feels like the whole world's asleep and I am just doing whatever it is, playing video games, watching a movie, watching, it's award season, so I'm watching all the actors roundtables on YouTube. So still learning, still, those kinds of things, but that's food for me. I love those kinds of things. So then I have to learn how to take that relaxation that I get when I'm just hanging out and then apply that to when I'm working, because I tend to get not so relaxed when I'm working because of all the things that happen in your head and the judgment and all those kinds of things. So again, something I'm working on, something I'm getting better at, but it's like that to me is something that I want to get better at over time, because I know that I'm rarely relaxed. But that's the only way you can really successfully do, especially the acting thing, because you have to be in touch with everything. And the only way you can do that is if you're totally relaxed.
If you're not giving yourself that time to relax, then you're gonna be holding on to the anxieties of the day. I feel like
Yeah.
that the art of leisure is important because you can regulate the day and you can let the stress of the individual day pour out through something that you find enjoyable. And if you don't do that regularly, it definitely builds up.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you're not resting here and there, then there will come those days when you just crash and burn.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes there's such thing as too much relaxation too. Cause like I'll stay up
Absolutely.
too late because I'm enjoying myself and I'm, watching these videos and I'm watching movies and I'm playing games and stuff. And I do that too much, then I will have that day or two that's like, oh, I did not get enough sleep. Usually I'm pretty good on low sleep, but there'll be a day that it all catches up to me. And that's when all of the things come. That's when the anxiety comes. That's when the depression comes. That's when, all these things come. Sleep is so important. And I know that in my head, but sometimes I just don't get enough of it.
See, I think that this is so interesting that when we were in college, like we didn't talk about, and I feel like this is going to be in every single interview that I have, that I'm going to say the same things, but we didn't normally talk about these type of things. I mean, we met, like you were saying, like we met, I think freshman year we met, but we were working
Mm-hmm.
together on projects and stuff come our like junior year. But we didn't have these type of conversations, and not just us, but in general, it was not something that we discussed. And I don't want this to become a thing of like what we didn't learn in college, but I just feel like there's limited time to learn a lot of these things, and you have to be able to apply
Yeah.
it to a person who's actually like going through the work. Like if you're not a practicing artist, how will you know what a practicing artist is actually feeling? And then
Hmm.
how do you wouldn't even have to have that conversation of regulating that if it's not something that's being experienced.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's so interesting that now, whether it's just our generation or it's the way that society is talking about stuff these days, but most of our conversations revolve around like, how the heck do I just do what I want to do? How do I stay
Hmm.
present for the things that I want to do? Um, and I feel like most of our conversations, at least in the past couple of years, have stemmed around not even the art of like the specific story that we're creating. I mean, there's a few audio dramas that we've put out, but we've had so many conversations about like other bigger projects and stuff that will happen.
Hmm.
But so much of our conversations have stemmed around self-care and
Yeah.
just getting through those blocks. And I think that there's
Hmm.
something really cool about having a creative that you're talking to about those frustrations, because we're experiencing in different ways. I can go and talk
Hmm.
about creative blocks with other people, and maybe they land at certain times, but there's something about talking to a creative about it that gets
Yeah.
the energy, gets the Aurora energy of what these projects are, and then can offer insights or advice or ways of moving and grooving with the blocks when the light is really trying to just beam outward.
Hmm. Yeah. And well, first of all, I, ever since you explained to me your sort of your idea of Aurora energy, it's so clear to me that that is like probably the best like representation in real life of what it does feel like when you are you're running on all creative cylinders, you're just loving it, you're everything, like it's that feeling that we did get when we were making As Ever in college, and that was that feeling, when you and I are on the phone and we're talking about the ideas are just rolling, and like
Oh
we're
God,
loving
yeah,
every
totally.
minute of it. um and when you see, when you watch your favorite movie and you're just filled with that, and knowing that that beautiful light is also inside you, and you just have to be able to see it and let it out, and so the whole thing, I just wanted to say that real quick, that I love that, and it's something that I focus on a lot. The image, I focus on that image a lot, um, to remind myself to look for it and let it
Oh,
out.
that's awesome.
Um, yeah, I think it's so cool. And yeah,
And they're light. I guess just the way you said that, I hadn't even thought about it that way. That it is light, like it's light, but it's not heavy.
oh yeah,
And
yeah,
I feel like when we're
yeah.
getting excited, like we can't even like keep up with it because we're like it's just moving so fast. Speed of light, I guess
Hmm.
you could say. And whenever we're like bogged down and we're frustrated, where we're not able to move that energy fast enough, there are elements of us that I feel are slowing us down. And a lot of times
Hmm.
it's having someone that can see that and can offer that insight. And I feel like that's very similar to, when you're rehearsing or you're getting a monologue going and stuff, having someone offer you insights can free
Yeah,
you up to let that light flow out of you. And so I'm so glad
yeah,
that like that visualization does speak to you in the way that it speaks to me.
yeah. It's very helpful, and I think it does come from like that combination of like, yeah, the majority of our conversations for the last few years have been just like talking about our own growth as humans, and how we care for ourselves better now than we did before, and how we do that while doing the creative stuff that can be very personal and difficult to achieve. And um, so I think all of that comes together and creates that light. And I don't know if I've told you this, but the auroras have actually been kind of, in a way, following me for my whole life.
Oh,
And I don't, yeah, I don't know if I told you this, and I don't know if I even really realized it until like I was last night or 2 nights ago. I was like, it's funny that like the Northern Lights have kind of been a part of my life since the beginning of my life, and now it culminates into this, where it's like,
wow.
oh, that's why. And so when I was a kid, and I,
You probably saw them growing up
yeah,
at
well, and
some
that's the
point.
thing, and yeah, at my house in Northern New York, uh, it's there's not a town for like 7 miles in any direct,
Oh,
7 to 12 miles in any direction, and so there's no light pollution. So you shut all the outside lights off at your house, and then you look up and you can see millions of stars. And on a clear night, you can actually see the Milky Way galaxy. You can actually see that light streak in the sky that where you know like that's where all the stars and the planets are in our solar system that I'm looking at. And then so when I was a kid, and I can only remember this vaguely, but when I was a kid, I remember some nights looking up and seeing, you don't see the ribbons, you don't see what you see in like a nature documentary with those beautiful things, but like there's like the little blotch of green here.
yes.
And my dad's he's very much a stargazer. He's very much loves looking at the moon, the stars, and explaining and constellations and things like that. And so he would say, I remember hearing at a very young age the term aurora borealis, and so he'd be like, "That's aurora borealis, or the northern lights." And so I got it explained to me when I was young, and also I was in every music group that my school offered from kindergarten through high school. It was all one building, K through 12, small school. But when I got to high school, we had, your high school had chorus, your high school had band, there was jazz band, there was marching band, but then there was a chorus that was called select chorus, and that was like people who really, really wanted to do it and really loved it and were, enjoyed it to the point where they would want to get up in the morning and go to one day a week, an hour before school started at like 7 a.m. and practice songs and perform them at the
Okay.
school concerts. Yeah. And we took that to a talent show one time. We sang Africa by Toto a cappella. And but we
Cool.
we called our group Northern Lights because we found some old
Really?
folders. Yeah, we found some old music folders, some old choral folders from like back in the schools, like back in the day, like maybe like in the 60s or 70s, maybe. And it said Northern Lights on all of these black folders in like a gold etching. So we were like, the choruses of past in this high school had called themselves the Northern Lights, so we should call ourselves the Northern Lights. So it's weird that they just
I
keep
love that.
kind of popping up here and there, and then you
Mhm.
bring this to me, and I'm like, yeah, you're like, it's been with me forever, some small way.
It's funny how we've never talked about that, especially you seeing the Northern Lights with your family, and I love how it's infused with like your dad's storytelling of what the constellations are, because
Mm-hmm.
there's that. We talk a lot about how the voice and the of the I don't know, the voice of the narrator that you put on for a lot of our short stories often is connecting to like the visualization of like a guy sitting around a fire and all the villagers have come by sharing stories, and really what that is there's obviously something very human about that, and especially nowadays that we've lost that community aspect of hearing stories and around people. um, but I think it's this timelessness of something that we're connecting to that just feels so right and feels so seen. And everything that you're saying with like at nighttime when it's quiet and the light pollution's away,
Mm-hmm.
even if the auroras aren't, what they are in photographs, there is something about them. There is something otherworldly. There is something that really offers us the ability to connect with others.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
especially like anchoring yourself in memories with your father and the way that it's present amongst all the stars where all these other stories are come to be.
Yeah.
It's just it offers a unique space to be able to be seen, and I love that. Just the visualization of the Northern Lights and the music, for the music group and whatnot. You knew,
Mhm.
like, you guys knew that there was something special in this that needed to be retold, that needed to
Yeah,
be brought to light in a new way. So I find it's cool that like everybody has some way that they view the Northern Lights that's similar. They might not have like little anecdotes like that of how they brought, the art of living and the art of creativity to light, but
hmm
it's um it's neat that everybody can sort of find their place within it, which I guess is
yeah.
the whole point of all the myths and all the ideas and all the stories. And really, I feel the stories that we're trying to tell, they
It's
connect to
univ-
these bigger universal themes rather
It's
than
yeah.
with a neat little tale and then moving
It's
on.
it's definitely universal because you're never gonna show somebody a picture of the Northern Lights or a documentary, like film footage, like Nat Geo, like Arctic video of the Northern Lights, and somebody look at it and go, "Eh."
Eh,
You're never gonna have that. It's always gonna be wow. At the very least, it's gonna be wow.
yeah.
Like there's no way you can look at that and not think that is beautiful. And I just don't. I mean, uh, like my dad's colorblind and he's fascinated by it. Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna get any. I don't think you're gonna get anybody in the whole universe look at that and go, eh, not for me. It's just like, and that's why I think it holds such a great visual for me in my mind of searching for that beauty, whether it's you know because you want to connect with as many people as possible. I mean, that's a huge part of art and expression is you want somebody else to relate to that. And if everybody can find the auroras beautiful and you let yours out, then you know it's possible that everybody would think that's beautiful too. You know, obviously it's not going to work in the
Something
same
about
way, but it could be.
Well, I feel like a lot of it is the lack of judgment.
Yeah, yeah.
When you look at the aurora or you hold that visualization of it, there's no judgment because it doesn't make sense. There
hmm
is no room for it, and it's not something that we see day to day, but we know that they are happening regularly, and the visualization doesn't go anywhere. So I know for myself, I feel like when I when it's late at night or I'm not worried about the woes of the day or the timelines of things that I think I have to do, um, and I just look at my passion or these projects or these things that I want to bring to light, there's no judgment, you know, but the judgment does creep in when I start thinking of how it's going to fit into the rest of the world and stuff. But if you think about the aurora, like the aurora are just huge and they're for everyone to see, right? You just got to kind of be in the vicinity. And if you don't want to look at them, you just look down, go do whatever else you were doing. But they're there, and it's not like I feel like so much of my path had been okay. I'm gonna create these niche stories that are like the answer to everything, but like they have to be communicated to the right audience. And if you don't get it, oh, you don't get it. Like it's not for you. And it's like, it's like it doesn't make any sense because an idea that's universal and an idea that works, even if you're not ready to receive it in a way that might move you in some way, it still needs to be accessible and presentable. So I think that like it helps me see that our passion and our love and our creativity and just life energy in general, which is synonymous with Aurora energy, you can't limit it. It
Mhm.
needs to be shared with everybody. And if people are willing to connect with it and they want to in some way, great. If not, it's a good opportunity to see judgments that might arise or see hesitations and let those
Mhm.
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of what we talk about,
Yeah.
and
Oh
how we
yeah.
think that like people might be judging our work or judging, the fact that we're still trying to learn and we're still trying to, I don't want to say the word perfect because I hate that.
Yeah.
But how to get better at communicating things. And it really comes down to like if you and I are chatting about, we're chatting about life and art and whatever, are we actually able to communicate what we're talking about.
Hmm. Yeah.
And if we're not able to communicate these deeper messages and just things that are important to us in our day-to-day lives, how are we ever going to communicate that in the things that we're working on?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
We're getting
Um,
better, without a doubt.
yeah. Well, and we always, that's the thing is like you say, try to perfect. It's like and I hate it too because, you're obviously never going to reach that. But the beauty of art and creativity is that you can always strive to be better because there's no perfect. You can always be evolving, always be learning, and always moving forward. You might take a few steps back here and there, but you can always find ways to move forward. If there's no ceiling of perfect, then you can always be moving up. And I feel like that's what we're in pursuit of all the time is how can we get better at this thing, but also how can we be more courageous? Because I feel like we have gotten a little more courageous over the years too, like understanding that we have to be vulnerable in order for people to let people in. We have to be specific in order for people to relate, which is something that I had to learn. I actually learned that in college. I think I
Yeah,
told you
tell me
about
about
this.
this because I love how you describe being specific and why it's important in
It's very,
connecting.
it was so cool to realize that what great professors we had in a lot of these like creative writing classes. And I mean, so it was a big class. It was in the campus center auditorium. So it was like, 100 kids. And, uh, I think the teacher was Lee Wilson,
Mm-hmm.
I
I think so.
think. Yeah. So it was called Living Writers Series, and we
Living
would have
writers.
different writers come in, and they would talk about their experience as writers. And we had some pretty, accomplished writers come in here. I mean, like the creator of Monk came in,
Yeah, I know
and a
him.
couple other people. Yeah, he was really cool. He
He was
talked to me, took some time to talk to me, and it was really generous and really nice, and gave me some advice and whatnot. But so we had these like daily sort of writing exercises, and they were really fun. And so I wrote this one thing. I can't remember what it was now, but I wrote this one thing, and it wasn't specific at all because my mind I had to keep it broad so that I could have more people connect to it. And I had a conversation with her, the professor, and I said, well, and I said that. I said, well, I thought if I wanted to connect with people, I had to keep it broad because that includes as more people. And she said, no, if you want to connect with people, you have to be specific. Because even though it seems like maybe you're the only one having this experience, you're not. There's a ton of other people out there having the same experience or a similar experience, and you're not going to reach in and tug at those heartstrings. You're not going to strike a chord with anybody if you're being broad in those situations, because the more specific you get, the more somebody's going, oh yeah, you get it. Oh yeah, you get it. And then more and more specific, it's like, oh my God, it's like it's me. You can't get that
Yeah.
moment in art where you go, oh, that's me, unless you're super, super specific, because you're a specific person. I'm a specific person. We're not broad. We all have our own, you know, perspectives and individual uniqueness and whatnot, but we do have things that we can relate to within one another. And it's that wow moment of, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
And you can't have that if it's broad. And so just when she said that, she said, no, you want people to relate, you have to be specific. The more specific you are, the better you will relate. And I was like, whoa, did not know that. And so like over time, I feel like you and I have, it, in order to do that, you really do have to be vulnerable, because the more specific you get, it tends to get more personal.
So define specific is specific in terms of the character's journey of like where they like the world that they're in or the experiences that they're having, or do you mean specific as in these are the emotions and vulnerabilities that this person's having in relation to the things that are presented to them?
So I think it's both. I think it's external and internal. Everything has to be specific. Everything has to have a place, and everything has to be decided. It can't be. Let me give you another example from college. Brad Corbus-Meyer. I had I studied with him like a private, like one-on-one class that I took with him, advanced playwriting. And instead of playwriting, we did screenplay. I wrote some stuff and brought it in, and he would talk to me. And one time he chewed me out wicked bad. He was just like, look at all of these opportunities you have to reveal character that you don't take advantage of. And so I would write a character would ask a question, and then the next character would answer the question. But the answer to the question was so general, or so like you could predict it. It was predictable. He was like, look how many opportunities you have in here where the character could say something that would teach us something about this character rather than just answer the question and give the audience the information. Because, and that in turn, that is, I guess, external specificity, you know, what people are communicating with one another. But that's what reveals the internal. That's what reveals what this character is feeling in the way that I'm visualizing it here. So like, you know, if you ask me, how are you doing? And I answer with, good, how are you? That's predictable. We know that's probably going to be the conversation. But if you say, how are you doing? And I answer with silence, that reveals, one, things aren't okay. And it reveals something about how I'm feeling, but it also, it's way more specific than good, how are you? You know, it gets to something.
Yeah.
It's starting to peel back the layers of something, and then we can explore it even more and get more specific. But it's about peeling back the layers and revealing the character, and you can do that. Like I said, it's external and internal, but everything's got to be specific. They tend to teach that a lot in acting, which is you have to make these decisions beforehand. You can't go into this not knowing the answer to these questions that are happening in the background. The audience might not know. The director might not even know, but you as the actor have to make these decisions about this character beforehand. Does one of the classic ones, does Hamlet know he's being watched when he's doing To Be or Not to Be? Is he performing, or is he really crazy and feeling these things? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like you as the actor have to make that decision because it's going to make the show different. Audience might not know exactly what's going on, but underneath that, but they're going to experience it differently depending on what you decide. Everything has to be specific.
So were you finding that when you were writing your scenes that was it that you weren't being specific in terms of what the responses could be, or that overall you hadn't crafted out an individual yet who you can chip away at through the scene to understand what's at the core?
Oh yeah. I didn't know my character, you know.
Okay.
I didn't take the time to really figure out who this character was.
But is that like more difficult? I guess for you, is it like it's more favorable, or you tap into the acting when like you can be more physical with it, you can embody it, and you can find ways to, like, you know what I mean? Does that reveal itself to you faster than just writing it down, or is writing it down and writing a script as important in the craft of learning how to do all this stuff?
I mean, I feel like the decisions and the specificity happens faster when the stuff is already in front of me. You know, you give me something, piece of material, and I can already, ideas are already starting to flood. You know, like I can start to visualize these characters and who they were in the past and who they might be after this story and things like that. If I'm creating it, if I'm starting to write it, there's just a ton of work that has to be done before I even start, so that I know, you know, you got to know these people before you start writing them. But yeah,
True, but I
so
feel like there's always a big period of like discovery of what the characters are. I mean, if we're thinking of like As Ever, for everyone, like that's our old film from college. Like that was an eye-opening experience for me because of how much you put into it, and the questions that you brought, and the background that you discovered, and all the work behind the scenes of understanding who your character was just like, all of a sudden I had all these questions that I had to find answers for that maybe I had thought about, or maybe were just intuitive choices. But then everything you brought to it it forced me to like articulate what that vision was and who this character is. So I feel like there's sure, like, you know, the text does provide a lot, but you bring so much to it.
I think that's a part of it, right? The collaboration. You and I are going to discover so much more about the story that's not on the page by
Mm-hmm.
just having a conversation. That's why you can't create art in a vacuum. It just doesn't work that way. It's going to be way more colorful and specific I don't know. It's just gonna it holds more weight and it has more power when you're working with somebody else because you're bringing more life experience to it. I mean, I'm bringing my life experience to it, but you have a whole other lifetime of experience that you can bring to it. And because we're on the same wavelength and we can do those things, it's going to bring more stuff to it. I had 3 scenes, right? It was 3 scenes. So in my head, I was like,
2, 3, yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
had 3 scenes to
Like
bring this
4.
character. Yeah. But it was
Like,
like, okay, well, I'm giving myself a 3 act structure. This character has to go through this thing. So now I need to work with you to figure out, okay, how can we bring this character from A to C in a way that's going to connect with the audience, and in a way that the audience is actually going to care about what happens to him at the end. You know, that was my main focus, and I think that's where I can come to the table with an idea of what my main focus is, and then you, as the writer director, can help me to get there if my main focus is aligned with your main focus and all those kinds of things. But like when I brought those things to you, you were like, "Oh yeah, you're right. We have to make sure that happens." And so this is how we're going to do it together. And I think collaboration is a huge step in that process of finding the characters because they say about like theater is an actor's medium, cinema is a director's medium. So you have more latitude in the theater as a character to come to the show and play it the way you want to play it, because the director knows, because they've worked with you in the audition and those things. They know that, oh, they're going to play it this way, and that's the show I want to do. So that's
yeah.
why I want to see this show or this show. This person's Macbeth, this person's this or whatever. So the show is going to be different based on the actors that you cast. And yes, the director's vision is a huge part, but the actors are given usually a little more latitude. But in cinema, that visual medium is the director's vision because they have the power with the camera and everything. They know exactly those cuts they want. They know those. So you as the actor have to be a little more adaptive to what they want. But there's still a level of collaboration that when I come to the project and you come to the project and we meet in the middle, we're sharing ideas and we are revealing more about the story and the characters as we have those conversations. I mean, you hear them in interviews all the time, you know, I didn't know this about my character until then, or I didn't until I talked to this person, you know. So I think that's a really huge part of it. It's just the collaboration step. It's a huge step.
2 memories that pop up were in your like second scene in As Ever, when your character was discussing, like, you know, just not wanting to participate in going to college and pursuing this dream, like not a dream, but pursuing what he had to do in his day-to-day life. And he felt like he was giving a lot of his life energy away. And I remember, like, in the script, maybe I'm imagining this, but we had been trying to figure out like what his profession was and what exactly was he studying, because your character Tim was sort of a goofball. He had a fun spirit and stuff, but he was locking himself into a career that he didn't want to do. And I think it was you that you had said that, like, what if it's like his father, you know, his father was trying to get him to be a lawyer, so he had to study certain things,
Oh yeah, we added a line, didn't we?
like do what the old man wants.
Do what the old man wants. Yeah, we did. We added a couple lines to Tim,
Yeah, and
because
like
we
it
had
was
those like
cool because
side
we were playing with
conversations.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that came from the side conversations, like, okay, well, it's not really this and it's not really this, and you know, it didn't make sense. And then all of a sudden it was, this is the anchor,
Mm-hmm.
because it's relatable and it is specific to his situation, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense with the times, and it makes sense, you know, that like a father in the 1940s would want his son to continue the family path of being a lawyer. And
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense why his frustrations and his, you know, I don't know, just like this darkness was creeping into your character.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I remember was so powerful. The other, shoot, what was I going to say? The other was I remember we were having a conversation because the topic of suicide and death and choices and that come into play for this character, and we were discussing like religious ideas, and we were discussing what the afterlife means to us, and all these deep conversations that like we didn't have too many of in college, and especially at that point. And so I still refer to it as like, if you're having the conversation of what, like, should we be shooting like a close up or a medium shot? If you're having that conversation, that's, you're not doing the work. You're not putting your focus where it needs to be. The conversation that you're anchoring yourself in needs to be, what is the core essence of how do we feel as creatives? And then how do these characters, what are they anchoring themselves in terms of their beliefs? And through that, the shots start to reveal themselves. The
Yeah. I
beats
think,
that are necessary, just sort of. I mean, I remember
yeah.
like Tim's final scene, like storyboarding that out, and it was just so intuitive. It was so much more intuitive than any of the other scenes because of how we had opened up to each other and how
Yeah.
going into that shoot, like I knew you and I knew exactly what was going on emotionally for
hmm
him, and we just did it. It was a very
Yeah.
quick shoot.
I think,
That scene.
everybody works differently, but I do think that is the way that I like to try to get to. And again, back to the relaxation thing. If you can relax
Mm-hmm.
and talk about story, character, and what you are emotionally connected to in terms of those things, and you let the project tell you how to shoot it, you let it tell you what it needs. And that's kind of how I like to be with figuring out characters and figuring out what, you read the script, you figure out all the information in there, but you kind of are able to just sit still. Stillness is another big one.
Mm-hmm.
And let the thing tell you what it needs. You come to it as it's an act of service. You're serving the project. You're serving, whatever it could become. And you let it, whatever it is to you, tell you what it needs. And it's a very kind of like woo woo, sort of like spiritual type way to think about it. But to me, it's helpful because you kind of get yourself out of the way of it. It's a way to get yourself out of the way of.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean like you're overthinking. Is this gonna do this? Is it gonna do?
It's your
It's like
judgments, it's your
the
blocks. Like
judgment,
it's
exactly.
getting that out of the way and then
hmm
letting you connect. And I feel like for any of the projects that I'm doing, I'm like, I don't know, I guess I found from years of trying to get people to be a part of projects and to sign on to things, and then not really, I used to call it like looking at the flame within them, and I look at it as Aurora's, but like there has to be this connection at the beginning of it, and then that can grow and become more and more vibrant and flow out.
hmm
But I feel like for a lot of this, I mean, I like what you're saying of like relaxing and calming your mind down so you can get into your body and let your real energy connect with it, because that's where the magic happens, right? Like you start to intuitively bring ideas, even if it's like small nuances or the way that the character might look around or when a character might sigh and what that feels like.
hmm
Because really,
Yeah.
it's not just interpreting the character; it's Keith bringing the character to life in a unique way through his experiences.
Yeah. Um, and I
It's
feel like
embodiment.
I feel like people have said this in many different ways, but I think Spielberg said it once too about, uh, and this goes with like the relaxation, the stillness, and I think Bruce Lee has one about it too. He said, like you have to be still so you can catch the genius, the kind of thing. But I think Spielberg says you have to listen to that really, really quiet voice. It's really hard to hear. It doesn't yell. It doesn't
Mm.
scream to get your attention. It's just there. It's confident enough to just whisper. And if you are still enough and quiet enough and relaxed enough, you might be able to hear that. And that's the one that guides you to the promised land, so to speak. And it's difficult to hear with all the noise of your thoughts and your overthinking and your judgments and the world and the exterior pressure, interior pressure, all those kinds of things. But if you can actually get yourself to a point where you can hear that and listen to it, that's what's going to lead you where you want to go most of the time. And it's instinct, really. It's kind of like just a big metaphor for instinct, listening to that and trusting it.
It's the call. It's a call to action
Mm.
that I feel like a lot of the times I mean, I know I'll say to myself like, why can't I just have a sign? Why can't I just know what to do? And I'm looking for this big, loud symphony, you know, Jordan, it's your time. Let's go. But you're right. It's the whispers, and I feel like this is a good way to segue into Flightless on the way to the north because of the line, "When the wind stirs, crisp and cool, creases in its beak, beckons me to take a chance." You know, like it's
Let me,
the moment when you're quiet and you're, I don't know, depressed, but it's like in the moments where I feel like we are conflicted and we're trying to see which way the path is to unfold.
mm,
The more resistance we put, the more we're gonna push away, like a magnet. Like it's just not gonna, two sides of the same thing. It's just not gonna work. But when we allow ourselves to relax and unwind and listen to ourselves, we hear those whispers,
mhm.
and they're so telling. But
In the
let's segue
spirit,
into Flightless. Yeah.
yeah. And right before we do, it's funny that that's the line that you decided to pick, because the thought that keeps occurring to me right now is I always know that you, Jordan, have tapped into the you, Jordan voice of writing piece when I'm reading it, and I've told you this, I can hear the wind, the Arctic,
Uh,
the Arctic wind. I'm reading it and I can just hear that, and I can almost feel the crisp coolness of it that we talk about in that line. Uh, and it's when it, obviously when it's when it's these Arctic stories, I know that you've hit that stride of Jordan's voice and expression in these types of stories, when I can read it and feel that cool air and hear that noise of, because it goes back to, like I said, I live in northern New York, so the winters were very cold, but my home in the woods was quiet. My father also owns a camp, and whenever we would go there, quietest place I've ever been on earth, and at night, darkest place I've ever been on earth. And if you stand quietly out in the middle of, there's a gravel pit there. If you stand quietly there, that's what it is. It's this quiet, cool, snowy, yeah, that. And when I can hear that and feel that when I'm reading, we haven't even finished anything yet. I'm just reading like your first draft or whatever. If that's there, I'm like, okay, Jordan hit it right here. Like this is you capture this moment in the whole thing, and there it is. Like, and so it's funny that you pulled
it's so
that.
cool. Well, it's so cool that like you look for that moment because I feel like in a lot of my own discovery as an adult, I look back at the moments where I thought I was escaping, like okay, like me as a teenager, like waiting until it's like 1 a.m. to put on like a Harry Potter film and like watch it for the 800th
Uh-huh.
time.
Yeah.
And like I have a visualization of like watching the Order of the Phoenix in the winter, and it's quiet and there's like snow falling around and the woods are all around my house, and
You got your little
there's
cup.
something about it, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm cozy, and I'm just like, yeah, there's just something about it that I think in my healing journey of looking at my shadows, I often looked at it as running away, looking for
Mm.
moments of like less stimulation. But I've found that like for me to start hitting my groove begins with silence.
Mm-hmm.
So in the workday, there is a stark difference between if I have the noise canceling headphones on and I don't. I'm
Mm.
very unfocused. I'm very all over the place. If I start the day off and I like wake up and I like hop in the shower and like get to work as fast as I can and stuff, versus I start the day off with breakfast and silence and I get to read a little bit and I get to write before going to work. Um, it's a completely different attitude. So I feel that there's something that in my spirit that really needs more silence and that negative space than I might like to think that I do. So it's cool that like you feel that moment in the stories when you sense that I'm about to hit that groove of now we're getting into some cool stuff when the silence does appear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's cool for me to hear. I guess I'll keep doing more things like that.
Yeah.
But I like those moments where, like, I know a lot of people, like, when they read books, like, they want to have action or they want to have the fast-paced stuff happening. But I'm all about, like, those quiet moments when a character does one little thing. Like, for me, like, in American Gods, like, there's so many, it's such a big book and there's so many things that happen in it. But, like, this character being in the middle of winter, he's stuck in a northern, like, Wisconsin town, and it's 5 a.m. and he goes and has like a pastry at a diner. And that's my favorite part of the book. A
Yeah.
character who's like it becomes like a demigod basically is just eating a pastry in the cold winter by a window. You know,
I
it
can
just makes me
relate to
think
that.
of
Like you can.
woodhopper paintings, and it makes me think of
Yeah.
it's the little things, right? Like
But
having
you've
a coffee made the right way in a little nice mug, like
Yeah, and but that's the thing is like of all of the growth and all of the progress that you've made as a person, as a creative and things, that's been at your core forever. Because I remember in college being even then you were about the breath. We have to let this thing breathe.
the conducting of the breath that you
Yes. You got to let this thing breathe. There needs to be about, and you be specific about it, maybe about 3.5 breaths, and then it's musical. And you have a musical background, as do I in a way, and we tend to think about these types of things as musical things, which is how like Flightless on the Way to the North, like in all the other audio dramas, we tend to work in that way of, I'll read it through one time, and I'll have a music in mind, and it's flowing in that way, and you'll have a couple of tweaks for the next run through, which is like, in a way, they're kind of musical tweaks. An accent here, a crescendo here. This needs to be a couple more rests before you hit this next note. It is quite a musical what you are conducting in a way,
it's a good way to
which is
put it.
yeah, it's a cool way to work because we both kind of understand that language.
My dad had a realization maybe a year ago when I was trying to figure out what Aurora Airwaves was going to be and why I like these audio dramas so much. He was like, well, it makes perfect sense. You grew up in a household with storytelling, with music, with, a multilingual house, with just languages all over the place and all sorts of like looking at European history and culture. Like it was just
The lore.
all there. So he's like, yeah. So he's like, no wonder why you don't want to do just one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've been saturated in that. And so I feel like it does make a lot of sense why we have a good workflow and we understand like when we're talking about the cadence and the breath and the beats and stuff like that, why it makes a big difference and why like in Flightless having the character sigh, just a beat of that changes the path and the course of the whole thing.
And even
And
though it's
those
a
little notes we get that we need to incorporate those.
and even though it's a narrator, it's like the narrator is doing this, is like sighing in a way as the character, which kind of goes back to like how, which I thought it was a really cool moment when we figured out like this is just a guy telling a story around a campfire. That's kind of like the image that we have. And if you're telling a story around a campfire, I don't know about you, but when I told stories around the campfire when I was a kid, you embody the characters as you tell the story. You get into it a little bit. So it's interesting that just the little subtle moments like that kind of capture that idea too, that the narrator will actually get into it a little bit for the sake of whoever might be around the campfire at that time.
Well, I mean, that's got to be the similarity, though, between, like, why acting has been a thing that has been around forever, really. I mean, it stems from the person around the fire. Like, in caveman days, like getting into the role, and putting their body into it. And I feel like now, what's becoming unhealthy in certain ways is when we're only looking at storytelling through a way of communicating something that was written down, but not letting it fill our bodies and our souls and all these things. I feel like a lot of things that I hear or a lot of things that are presented are lacking of this like somatic body experience. And so when I see, clips of you acting or your auditions or just like moments when you're like in it, or like when you film recording these audio dramas and I get to see the behind the scenes kind of thing, like your body is in it.
It
And
has to
it's
be
so
for that.
interesting because,
Yeah.
a lot of writers don't necessarily do that. And I'm not here to say that writers are, don't have like their own systems and whatnot. But I know for myself, if I'm writing, I can say, oh yeah, this makes sense, or oh, this is cool. But if I don't read it out loud, I'm not going to sense the cadence. I'm not going to sense the rhythm. And, I'm a human. I have a pulse. I have a breath. I have, there's only a certain amount of words I can say in a sentence. I mean, for me, it's a lot longer because I do a lot of run-ons. But there is a cadence. And so a lot of this is getting in the body. And I feel like you're fantastic at that, understanding what you need to bring to it.
Well, I think it's, I mean, especially with voiceover like you can't do it unless you are, because people say that the phrase "your body is your instrument" if you're an actor, but especially if you're doing voiceover, because the way, if I'm sitting here and I'm talking, if I stood up right now, my voice would sound different than it sounds right now. It's just like an accordion or what, or whatever instrument you're talking about. You fold it in a different way, or you hit a different.
I'm thinking Lady and the Tramp all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
You put it in a different way. You bend a string on a guitar. You do what, it's all gonna sound different. So it's the same way with the voice. It's gonna sound different whatever way you put your body. And that's what another thing I learned in college from my acting professors is like, you're playing the voice of an old man. Put your body in an old man's body. Don't stand up. Don't, you're not standing up straight. You're not, it's, the world has weighed on you. You're down here, you're hunched. The body's closed a little more closed. So your voice is going to sound different if you're in that position. So I feel like it's almost like you can't do voiceover or narration. I'm sure there's people who do, audiobooks or whatever, who sit in a comfy chair and have the book here, those big studios and stuff, and they can get comfortable and do it. But I don't think I see that often. I see them all standing up, and I see them all using their hands and getting into it, because I don't think it's going to be as immersive unless you use the body, because it just doesn't. The voice is going to sound different one way or the other. So you do have to find those things, and you write in such a way that it lends itself to that. It lends itself to, this is a big moment. This is a small moment. This is a, if, it's all it's movement based. You even in the subtle moments, there's movements, and you have to find your way into those. And that's the fun. That's the fun for me. It's like, okay, how can I? And just language, just relishing in language. Just Mark Cole used to say that in class, acting class. Yeah. And you actually, that was probably the first class you and I ever had together, was Intro to Theater with Mark Cole.
Yeah.
But he used to say that. He used to say, relish the language, because he likes to. When you say the words, we just talk. You and I, we just talk. Everybody just talks. But if you really slow it down and you say the words that you wrote, and instead of you really get into the consonants and you really get into it, and you really, like he says, relish the language of it. Not only does it feel better saying it, I love it. I effing relish the language. I love that. I love it. And it's going to be more, people who listen are going to be able to get into it more if you do that. They're going to feel those words more.
I feel like we find that when we are doing like we're honing in on figuring out the tempo and the cadence and these type of things, I feel like we often realize we need to keep slowing it down
Yeah, a lot of it is slowing it down. Yeah.
because it's not a conversational flow. It's something that almost like we have to acclimate each time to. We can go a little slower. We can lean into these moments. The rests are as important as the actual words, you know. And oftentimes like it's just so cool when like I see for you when you're able to do bigger stretches or like this one like reading a whole poem and in like one take, which is really impressive. Um, all those little nuances are just so much more organic than if I had chopped it up. Like years ago, I was like, okay, I gotta like chop up everything to find all the right beats, and it's like, no, 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 no. Like the role of a director has to be trusting the actor to find the beats in that cadence. So maybe the audio drama in this way is more similar to a play, or at least the way that we're doing it, where it's, you know, like in the short films, of course, it's like chopping the hell out of anything and like
Hmm.
finding that really good flow. But I feel like we're within the limitations of like what we're doing, maybe we're finding something really unique and strong in that I'm learning how to trust the direction, but allowing the direction to not be a list of 800 things that I would like differently. It's finding, okay, well, what's the umbrella for all these 800 things? Oh, it's saying the character is pensive because they're depressed right now and they're unsure of their
Hmm.
journey. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
like Flightless. It's, and as soon as I'm able to articulate that, it's like, then you get where I'm coming from, which
Yeah.
then informs every other decision. And
Hmm.
then it's not even like decisions, it's just, you know, what part of your inner auroras you're tapping into.
Hmm. Yeah.
Now I'm speaking for you, but like that's
No,
how
it's
I
true. Like,
flow.
and I feel like we did, like you said, the progression of that over time. Like we went from, you know, here's like every line, this is in this line, do this, in this line, do that, give me a little more of this, blah, blah, blah. We went from that to these umbrella statements of throughout the whole thing, maybe give me more of this, maybe leave me a little more space at the end of each line, maybe do, things that I can just read the whole thing again and have these things in mind rather than record line by line and give you, exactly those little things. And I feel like it's been like a good streamline or speed boost, as you like to call it. It's been a good little speed boost.
Turbo
Like it
boost.
gives us
Turbo
turbo
boost. Yeah,
boost, yeah,
yeah.
gives us a nice little turbo boost, and it's open for for discovery of things that we might not have expected to happen too.
I mean, the everything that we're doing though is like it's understanding the systems that we need to abide by so that we're not bogged down by all the problem solving. And every single time we hop into a project isn't recreating the whole method of gathering what we need to gather. It's how can we have fun
Mm-hmm.
ultimately? And I feel like
Yeah.
that's something that got lost along the way after college. It became so much of like, oh my gosh, this is what all the festivals need, and this is what everybody in the industry has and what they're doing. And it's like, yeah, it's important to know where expectations are, the direction of them. But I guess this dovetails back into what we started with, which is like just having fun and just tapping into like what needs to be created. And even a story like Flightless, which is, it's very personal, and it's very relatable. Everybody can find their own version of that in that story of
Mm-hmm.
having a path, having a quest, and it not going the way you thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
And it becomes this path of picking yourself up and believing in yourself and going right back forward in the same direction, but it's the energy is a little different
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
cleared up. And I feel like for me, does every story need to be like the most hilarious, comedic, funny thing in the world? No, there could be elements of that in what I'm doing, but I still find a lot of joy in communicating how I authentically feel. And that
Yeah.
might be a different way of looking at it. I feel like I used to write like lots of ghost stories and lots of stories that involved heavier topics, and not everyone in my circle was understanding of why I was going after those themes.
Hmm.
And I think it was often met with, why are you telling not just nice stories, or why are you telling depressing stories? And I feel like that warped my perception of what it was that I was doing. I'm the stuff that is meaningful to me, I'm going to communicate that.
Yeah.
And they might not always, oftentimes it might be heavier themes, but that's authenticity, and that's vulnerability, and that is joyful, and that is light, and that is just, you know, doing something like Flightless has, what is that? When did I write that? I wrote that a year ago, and that is still sustaining wondrous energy through me and connecting
Mm.
to so many people. And I hope that's what Aurora Airwaves can continue to do as we go
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. And I I think that that's like the main thing. Like I think we hit on is like creativity in general. If you're a creative person, if you're a writer, if you're a director, if you're an actor, if you're a painter, if you're a musician, if you're a poet, if whatever it is that you do that's creative, if you find yourself getting to a place where you're creating your art for someone else, if you're creating your art and it doesn't, it seems more like work than it does fun. If it doesn't adequately represent who you are at your core, you're finding yourself in those situations. You have to step back, find that stillness again, find that relaxation, find that quiet, and reevaluate a little bit and try to seek out that aurora energy that you might have had at the beginning, or maybe you haven't even found it yet. But to be creative and to express yourself and to put that work out there, yeah, there's going to be an element of anxiety to it. There's going to be an element of, you know, whether you can help it or not. There's going to be a little self judgment there. There's going to be all those things that you have to contend with and get better with over time. But you got to be having fun. You got to be enjoying what you're doing, because creating art is already too, there's too much pressure already from external places for you to be putting even more pressure on yourself. And I am being hypocritical right now because I do it all the time, but it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
it's the it's the
Beautiful.
pursuit of it. Yeah, it's the pursuit of that that
Pursuit
that
of it.
place where you can relax, enjoy this thing that you're creating, having fun doing it. Like that's like the greatest place to be, is like when you're especially collaborating with people and you're just like having a blast. Like, this is so cool. Like this thing that that ideas. Oh my God, I can't believe where'd that come from? How did you get that? Those kind of moments, find that fun, that enjoyment, and where you feel fulfilled in your soul, that you're actually adequately and accurately expressing what's inside and letting that light out, as we talk about. And if you've lost that along the way, that is what you should get back to if you can, and try to and use the auroras as that visual. You have to find your auroras again, or if you haven't found them yet, that's what you're looking for, that beauty within you, because it's there. You just have to find it.
And maybe that's the reason why it's important to have, for all creatives, it's important to have side projects that are your own, or with your collaborators and stuff, that are not the thing. It's not the energy that you're supplying to the day-to-day job. It's special, and it's an outlet for you to start seeing yourself in a healthy way without needing to rush and present it to the world. I mean, we kept our audio dramas pretty much to ourselves for a couple of years, and they slowly started to make their way out, and
Mm-hmm.
slowly started to have more venues of places where it made sense to show them. But I feel like, looking back, like, what an amazing thing. If we had been presenting those too early, I feel like it would have warped our perception of ourselves and what we were supplying, because it is a radically different way of looking at that inner energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
So the whole process of becoming still is something that we had to do, and it's something that you don't just do once in your life either.
Oh
And
yeah.
sometimes there are periods where you have to step away from projects for a long time and say, I'm done with this for now. I mean, I remember saying that with my book. I think I was telling my cousin early 2022, working on a book for years and then saying, I have to put this away. I have to put this away. This is ridiculous. If it's meant to be, it'll come back into my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to put it away because it's just the wrong energy that's being put into it.
Yeah, we talk a
And
lot
I end
about
up
following.
finding a new way.
We talk about following the inspiration a lot of time. You know, if it's not inspired, if you're not, you know, being inspired to do that thing, don't force it, because you force it, it's going to become something that it's not supposed to be. And that brings you back to like letting the thing tell you what it needs. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I try my hand sometimes at writing music, and the last, you know, few songs that I wrote and put together, I would work on one for a little while one day, and then that one would kind of lose juice, and I'd work on the other one. You'd follow the inspiration, you know, like I want to work on this, I want to work on this more. So that's kind of how it is for my creative pursuits. Is I have this thing I want to work on. I have this thing I want to work on. We all have like 1,000 things we want to work on, but the thing that today feels right, this is what I want to delve into. Follow that. It doesn't matter that you didn't get this other one done. You know,
Right.
that's what we talk about. Like you said it earlier. You said the phrase, you know, I don't want to get bogged down with the day, the woes of the day, and with the things that I think I need to do. The things that I think I need to do. We all have that. Like, I need to do this. I need to do this. Well, take a step back and ask yourself, do I actually need to do this right now? Or is that just something that I'm telling myself, or that, you know, that
It's
with
a
the
want.
things,
And why is it a
yeah,
want? Like, that's the thing to unpack. Like, I remember, I feel like it was about getting up in the morning. And I was saying out loud that I need to get up early in the morning because I need to get stuff done. Why do you need to get stuff done? Well, I need to get creative stuff done before work. Why? Well, so, or, you know, before I can go out and like, you know, enjoy the day with somebody. And it was like, well, why do you feel that you need to achieve something before you can hang out with people or before you can go and give yourself to something else?
before you think you deserve that, before you think you
Exactly.
deserve something. Yeah. And it's like,
And that's a
yeah,
dangerous place to say
yeah,
that you have to be creative and pour yourself into something to deserve to live your life.
yeah,
Not a great outlook. You get to be creative because you're living this life, whether
because you
you're,
live life. Yeah.
yeah. And whether you're going to acknowledge that you're living your life or not, you are living your life.
Life informs the art. So you have to go and do things and experience things and live life, because without that life experience, you're losing richness in your art without experiencing what
Hmm.
else is out there.
And if you're inspired to go and do something, you have to answer that call. Whether it's hopping from one song to the next song and creating, or it's I want to go to, I don't know, I want to go to the art gallery today, or I want to go on a 5 mile walk, or I want to like go to a concert, or I don't want to do anything. I want to like lounge around and play Mario Kart. Like,
Follow the
if
inspiration.
that's it, don't you feel like there are so many things in life that, like, there's no point in articulating why we're drawn to certain things? Like, I feel like we can spend a lot of time figuring that out, but the minute pulls and pushes of like maybe I'll do this or maybe I'll eat that or maybe I'll go here. It's almost like training yourself to just trust that flow that is presenting itself to you.
Yeah. But also, like, the judgment comes in too. Like, why do I want this thing? Why am I this way? You know, or
Yeah.
it's like it's a balance between like, okay, I'm going to do something nice for myself because I don't feel well, or I'm in a depressed state, so I'm going to do something nice for myself. But then in doing that nice thing for yourself, you're judging that thing. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, why is this making me feel good? It's actually making me feel worse about myself. So there's a delicate balance with self-care that you have to strike and find, because you can make it worse for yourself.
So it's like understanding if doing the nice thing for yourself is laced with judgment or it's doing the nice thing is actually like disguised form of self-sabotaging.
Yeah, because you can let it become that. But I was talking my therapist had a really good way of dealing with this because I was telling her about like I would have a bad day, walk down to the McDonald's because that sounds good to me to do. And then when I'm eating in the McDonald's, I feel like, oh, I just start talking smack to myself. I just start talking bad to myself. Get that bad self-talk, that judgment and stuff like that. And she says, what if you try this? Next time you feel like going to McDonald's because you're not having a good day and you want something to cheer yourself up. When you go to McDonald's, don't just eat the McDonald's. Slow down and really enjoy it. Like feel the crunch of that McNugget. Feel the, like savor every minute of it but choose that. Say to yourself, I'm just going to enjoy the hell out of this right now and see what that does for you. Just see it. Because if you're going to do it anyway, give it a shot. And
What did it do?
it worked it doesn't always work, but like I decided, I put my headphones on, I was listening to some good music, probably Gregory Alan Isaac-Hoff at that point in time. And I was like, I'm going to mindfully do this because we end up doing things, just doing it mindlessly, just going for it, whatever it is. Especially in, things that make us feel better. Eating, I'm going to grab the tub of ice cream out, and instead of putting it in a bowl, I'm going to just bring the tub with me to the TV, whatever it is, things like that. I'm just going to go for it instead of slowing down, making a sort of, it's kind of a big word, but like ceremony, a little bit of ceremony to it.
That's cool.
You give yourself a little something, and so yeah, you just slow down and think, if this is something that is meant to make me feel better, if that's the angle that I'm telling myself, then why not really try to feel better? Why not really try to enjoy that thing? Be mindful of that. I don't know. It worked. I think if I am courageous enough and patient enough, and it's a path of resistance. There's the path of least resistance is just to go into it, just go for it, and end up in that darker place. You actually have to put forth effort to do the other one. So if you actually put forth that effort to really try, it can work. I've seen that with myself.
Well, and I feel like that effort is understanding where your brain is going to go and what does feel good, but then like knowing that like it's a journey of growing to that place where your brain is in alignment with where you want your brain to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you don't want to have that negative self-talk, okay, well that the noise of the negative self-talk is going to be there because it's habitual at this point. Like there are certain triggers that get it going there, but you might also at the same time know that I want to be saying these nice things to myself, or I don't want this to be present. The absence of it will be favorable. So and this is something that I struggle with, but it's something I'm working on, of like building positive habits and positive ways of looking at things. Or I should say, I don't know if it's positive. I feel like more beneficial.
Yeah.
In terms of my flow and what's good for me. It's finding the I don't know, being gentle with myself when I'm introducing ways that are more beneficial, while knowing that the other ways of being are still going to be there.
Yeah. And
Because it takes
habitual is,
time to get that flow going again, going in a
yeah.
more positive direction, beneficial
Yeah.
direction.
Habitual is definitely the operative word there, because it's like, when I say it's the path of least resistance, it's because it has become a habit. Like you say, it's muscle memory at this point. Your brain is used to, it's literally a physical thing that your brain has trained itself to do.
Yeah.
When I eat McDonald's, this is how I feel, or whatever it may be. And
You're back.
it's a muscle. Yeah. It's a muscle memory. The brain just knows. That's how advanced it is. So, because that's how whatever habit you're thinking of right now, of this thing that you want to work on, it is been going on for years. I bet years and years you've been treating this is how you've been training your brain. That's why it's so hard to relearn and rewire and create the new habit,
Mhm.
because you have to actually have the effort to do it. I mean, I think it's so my girlfriend and I have square plates. Okay. They're square glass plates for like dinner and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
My whole entire life I've had circular plates. Now, all of the corners of these glass plates are getting chipped because my whole life I've been used to moving around circular plates. These square plates now, I lift up and the corner will catch the counter, or it'll catch
Yep.
the sink, or whatever it is, because my whole entire life, my body, my muscle memory has been around knowing that this plate doesn't have corners. So we just had to buy new plates because they're getting so chipped on the corners because of that. And I made that connection in my head. I was like, this is so interesting. I've never done this with any plates in my entire life. Why is this happening so much now? And it's because I've only ever used circular plates. So
Mhm.
take that metaphor and use it for what you will. But that's how, that just a representation of habits and muscle memory. It is that powerful that it becomes it's a lack of thought. You don't need the thought. It's involuntary at that point. So you need to introduce the voluntary action of, I'm going to do this differently, and be very conscious of all these movements. Like, it's tough to do.
Well, and that's the act of courage. It's well, it can be putting yourself into situations, but it can also just be introducing one new element of something into your life and allowing yourself to be messy, allowing yourself to chip the edges of these things for the sake of gaining awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, that's what's cool about you having the square plates. Yes, it's doing things differently, but it's the act of allowing yourself to chip away at things and to break things
Yeah.
and to acknowledge, oh, well, this is how it is in certain situations. You're not going to have the perfect reading of something in the first go,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then like you're going to find the flow. The first draft is never going to be great. That's not the point of the first draft.
Mm-hmm.
you know you're supposed to bump up against things. Why? Because that means you're in conversation with something.
Yeah. 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 The
You're in
interaction.
conversation with your plate.
You're you're connecting with the
What's
plate.
the
You're becoming one
sauce? What's it's
with
That's the thing, right? It's
yeah.
what's not important is the corners. What's important is, as Keith always says, what's the sauce? What's the
There's the meat. There's the meat and there's the sauce. The meat is the main central core theme, and the sauce is what we put over top of it to make it entertaining. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, I feel like you can probably see, the lighting has changed quite a bit. I'm sitting in front of some big windows. I feel like it's probably time for me to get some food.
Yeah.
But dude, what a great first conversation. I feel like everyone who's listening to this knows that this is really just the tip of the iceberg, and I can't wait to see. As we have future projects that come up and future topics, I cannot wait to bring you back and just explore more of the colors of the aurora.
Yeah, and I mean, I could do this all day, and you and I pretty much have on separate occasions, just on the phone, just talking for hours on end, and that and that's what like I think it's really great that we are here in this place, because uh, um, it's really the culmination of everything. When you listen to Flightless on the way to the north, it really is a culmination of all of these conversations that we've had that are,
Mm-hmm.
2-3 hours in length over the course of however many years we've been doing that. And it's just cool that sometimes it takes years and years of progress and moving forward and self growth and self care and things, even just to get a pretty little piece of art.
Yeah, a 4-minute little
Yeah.
story.
So,
And it also speaks to why, like, whatever environment you're in, the network that you build, you have no idea where that's going to take you.
yeah.
I mean, we think about that theater class. We were sort of in the same sphere for a little while. We might have lived in the same dorm, I think. You were in Fennell, I think, for your first year. And
Mm-hmm.
you start to see people, you start to bump up against people, and then all of a sudden, maybe you're working on something with them. And I feel
Yeah.
like after college, I didn't have the perspective that I'd have now, which is that a lot of the people, not a lot, but a few people that I am still very close with collaboratively and creatively are people that I knew from that era.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people who have helped me throughout the way in that journey were people who were present at that time. And I feel like every step of the way is in my professional journey, but also in life, is because of the connective tissue of people that I've known. And it
Yeah.
might just be, the stars align in a certain way, or a certain interest connects with another interest, or whatever. But most of the gigs that I've ever had have been because of connective tissue that was already there.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's important to develop as much connective tissue as we can in the moments. I mean, look at that short film you just got,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
like all these different aspects of your life. It's developing those connections because you don't know where they're going to lead. And that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it. Like, who knows
Yeah.
what we're going to be making in 2024 and 2025, 2026.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's all exponential.
And following the connections that give you that Aurora feeling. You're like, this is the correct direction to go. Like, follow that for sure. And I think we have.
Yeah. And having creatives that you have in your inner circle that align with that
Hmm.
and don't,
Yeah.
you don't bump up against defining what these very important things are to you, to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they should check out Flightless on the Way to the North,
Thank
narrated by Keith
you.
Gallucci. Where
thank,
could they,
thank,
Keith, where can people follow you? Like on social media, or what would you like them to check out?
I'm on Instagram at and Keith Gallucci. I'm sure Jordan will have the spelling of my name somewhere in the post about this. But yeah, and Keith Gallucci. And then, I think it's the same on TikTok. If you're an actor, I do a lot of sort of educational stuff on TikTok about acting and getting your career started and things like that. So I'm there as well.
You have great TikToks,
Oh,
and
thanks.
I'm sure that's exactly what you would have liked watching when you were moving out there.
And you know what? It doesn't get. I don't have a lot of followers. I don't have a lot of views, but like it's really it's not there for that. It's there for if somebody catches it and says, "Oh, I didn't know that before," and that's going to help me make my acting journey a little easier because I did a lot of that trial and error already. So why are you going to go through it if I can just tell you, no, don't do it this way, do it this way? Not that there's only one way to do things, but, and I say that a lot, is just, don't let anybody tell you there's only one way to do it, but here's my experience and maybe it'll help you out. So yeah, check it out if you're trying to get into acting and you're not quite sure where to start.
Yeah. Well, I'll drop the link in the show notes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me. Thanks for
Yeah.
talking. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We do it. We have these talks all the time, but I never take them for granted because they're you never know what we can get onto. So, thank you for you know putting it up on putting one of our crazy conversations up on video.
Well, thanks for coming and thanks for opening up, and it's just so exciting because we have such a vault of experiences and ideas and types of
Mhm.
conversations, and
Yeah,
I'm glad we're of the same mindset of like let's share all these things with the people.
yeah. Because out of the 2 hours,
It's
maybe
been
one
good.
thing. Yeah, out of this 2 hours, maybe one thing will we'll reach somebody and they'll be like, yeah, I can latch onto that. That'll help me in my journey. Yeah.
But what if everything? Then we'll have little Keith and Jordan acolytes. They're like, hmm, hmm.
God help us.
That's the dream, I think. I don't know. Cool.
Or the
All right.
night,
Well,
or the nightmare. Could be the nightmare.
or the nightmare. I don't have dreams. I have nightmares. And then that people are taking our advice seriously. Well, we'll be back with more conversations in the future, but
Yeah.
thank you all. Now it's time for our meditation. Find a comfortable position, if you're able to, and close your eyes. Imagine the northern lights swirling all above you, and colors that your imagination paints for you. What colors do you see? How do they shine? The auroras sway gently above your crown, wrapping in the shape of curtains for miles on end. They are here for you. They are you. The universe is here for you as well. Repeat after me. The universe gives me the gift of breath, the gift of being calm. The universe gives me the gift of breath, the gift of being calm. I'll hold space for us. Together we'll meditate. And when we're finished, you'll hear my voice letting us know we're finished. So let's begin. Well done, everyone. Thank you for joining me under the Northern Lights once again. I look forward to sharing more Aurora energy with you all. Stay tuned. Keep an eye to the skies for our upcoming transmissions. In the meantime, please take just 20 seconds to give us a 5-star review. It'll help us grow and share our light with the world. It really will. And join us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook to stay in the loop with all that is to come. I'll see you soon.